What's up, everybody, and welcome to the first ever episode of the Fishing Intelligence Podcast. My name is Jacob Jasonic, and I'm going to be your guys' host. Fishing Intelligence, a fishing improvement podcast for the modern angler. You might recognize me from the ANGLR tour. And speaking of ANGLR, my first two guests on the show today are Nick and Landon, two of the founders of ANGLR, the company that is behind this podcast. So thank you guys so much for being here, and I'm looking forward to picking your brains about fishing, what it means to use, get some fishing stories, and just hear what you guys have been up to.
Yeah, man, thanks for having us. We're excited.
So let's start off talking about ANGLR. So give me the backstory to ANGLR, because I know a little bit about it, but tell me how it came about, what the goals were, and where you guys see yourselves now.
Well, what's funny, Jake, is I don't know if you even know this, man. ANGLR didn't even start as a fishing app. ANGLR started as a device. We called it OVA.
OVA.
Yeah,
OVA.
OVA.
What was OVA initially?
It was pretty much like a BlackBerry that you put on your fishing rod. Thing would port you a shot when you caught a big walleye or something.
We realized really quickly that people, when they heard OVA, they associated it with ovaries, and we realized that we couldn't go to market with that.
Yeah, we had to change the name.
We had to change the name pretty quickly.
Yeah, I kind of immediately got that vibe. That was a interesting first choice by you guys, but you got to go with a bold move.
It was circular, so and technically OVA is a singular fish egg by definition, but it's more commonly known as an ovary.
OVA had a screen on it. It had LED lights. It had a camera, so as soon as you set the hook, it turned the camera on and got all the action. It panned down and would cover everything.
Had a gimbal on it, yeah.
Gave you a real-time feed of what all your buddies were doing on the water, so you could see exactly where you stood. Dude, it was ridiculous. And then we got so excited we wanted to bring it to life for sport fishing and really for ourselves.
Yeah, I think the whole thing of mass features and just dreaming, if you will, was a lot of beer drinking, a lot of campfires, and then when we went to say let's actually do this, we got a little more real with ourselves and realized that it was probably too big of a vision to start with. So that's how we're here where we are.
So you guys were basically trying to take a smartphone, a GoPro, a gimbal, and a tracking device, merge that all into one package that fit on a rod.
Yeah, that you didn't have to have in your pocket. It was just on your rod, readily accessible all the time, right in front of you.
Yeah.
So then how'd you get from such a complicated device to then trying to simplify things and coming up with the first hardware, which was obviously the tracker?
So we'll get to that, Jake. That's a good question, man. But one other thing you have to know about OVA is it was literally born around a campfire. Landon and I had been fishing with some friends on the Allegheny River. We're here in Pittsburgh, north about 2 hours. It's beautiful. There's bald eagles everywhere. Gorgeous river that ultimately hits the Ohio, meets the Mississippi, runs all the way down into Gulf. But we're fishing, long day, up at 4 a.m., off the water when the sun's set and we couldn't see anymore. And we're sitting around the campfire and we're arguing. I caught the most. I caught the biggest. I probably did better than the last 6 fishermen in this stretch of river, but really nobody has a clue. We really had no idea who had a better day. And so the whole concept of OVA, that's the evening that she began and started coming to life, so we could just look at a device and understand what kind of day we had for ourselves, so we could improve our skills, but then also against each other, against other people who have fished that same stretch of river like we had that day. That was really where we were inspired.
So it was born out of a competitive drive, and then also out of self-improvement, is what you're basically saying?
Exactly right.
Yeah, pretty much. That's it.
And then it turned from this insane device to the much simpler tracker, which was your guys' first bit of hardware. How did the tracker come to be simplified, and then what was it like bringing something to market?
Yeah, so back to your original question of why didn't we create the BlackBerry on the fishing rod for fishing with all these crazy features to it? when we got more serious about this and, really excited about its potential, we started talking to people about the idea. People who we thought might be able to help us get a little step closer to this becoming a reality. And what we learned was a few things. Putting cameras into hardware and bringing that to life in 6 months to 12 months is really actually pretty complicated, along with all the other things that we were trying to put into this device. Not only that, but we started showing more fishing buddies, and they were like, "You think I'm going to put that huge thing on my fishing rod? You're crazy."
Yeah, really.
Crazy. So just along the way, Jake, this thing adjusted, and we learned that the screen, wasn't applicable for a fishing rod. So we started working onto a mobile app and keeping a small sensor device that would stay on the fishing rod, so that you didn't have to pull the phone out of your pull the phone out of your pocket, risking dropping it in the water, in order to check on your activity for the day.
Got it. Yeah, no, that makes total sense, because that's one of the beautiful parts about it, is you don't have to always have your phone out. Especially me being a kayak guy, like that just makes sense, because I've destroyed my phone before, fallen out of the kayak, so I know the pain of losing a phone to the water, and it's definitely not fun.
Yeah, it's like in the fitness industry, you see the same exact thing. It's like you have Fitbit, Jawbone, Nike Plus, Nike Fuel Band, heart rate monitors, all these awesome devices that'll monitor your activity throughout the day, so that you can interface with an app, make smarter decisions in the future, improve your health and wellness. We started really kind of thinking about the tracker and the smartphone as a similar interface, in that as a fisherman, you could learn all the detailed variables of your day, but not have to do anything to get that information, but still be able to improve, compete, compare, share, brag, have this experience at the end of the day that lasted.
Absolutely. And so what was your guys' backgrounds coming into just a fishing technology company? Where did you guys start? Because, a couple young guys, and all of a sudden you're a name in the fishing industry. How did that come about?
This is the part where you hear Landon brag that he's an Eagle Scout and best fisherman.
Yeah, well, that's not true. Especially the best fisherman side. But no, it's funny, because we don't really have true tech, coding, engineering backgrounds. We're basically sales, marketers, operations, guys that have run businesses before, and I think it really just came down to, we have a deep passion for fishing and this industry and what the sport means to us and the outdoors. And so it was kind of one of those things where, we recognized that we had a vision, and we could work with people and ask lots of questions and learn a ton about how all this stuff works. And it led us to where we're at. It's actually funny, because backing a little bit up onto the tracker piece, before tracker was anywhere near what it is today, it was we would use a hot glue gun and stick this little sensor board onto the fishing rod. And we had leased a property here in Pittsburgh that had a bass pond on it, and Nick and I would
one of our investors would put big largemouth bass in his live well, bring him to our bass pond every time on his way home, drop him in the bass pond. It was awesome.
So you had this massive massive bass stocked in this little work pond.
Yeah, pretty much. And we got that place because we could sit there with these fishing rods that had these sensors glued to the blank of the rod, and we would just catch fish, and the sensor was hardwired to a computer. So I'd stand there holding a computer. Nick would flip this rod out, or this bait. Usually it was a worm. Don't judge us for using earthworms, but
it worked.
It worked.
It's guaranteed.
Yeah, and we would just sit there all day. We would just record fish caught and cast and hook sets, and then all that information coming off of the rod.
Yeah, we were teaching a computer how to recognize fishing activities.
Yeah. And then we'd upload it to our engineers. They'd go and build algorithms off of it. They'd send us back an algorithm, and we, for, my gosh, probably 6 months, it was like, nope, didn't work. Nope, didn't work. And then I'll never forget this day. We were sitting there doing the same thing, hardwired computer to a fishing rod, and the bobber goes under, and Nick sets the hook and starts reeling it, and the computer starts dinging and says, fish hook, fish hook. And it was truly the
Oh
first
man,
time a computer ever self-recorded that a fish was on the other line fighting you. It was pretty memorable and quite exciting for us.
it's got to be a chills moment for sure. That sounds
I still have a picture of this little dinky bluegill that was technically the first fish ever recorded by a computer.
wow, very cool, very cool. So then, how did the tracker evolve into what is now the newest piece of hardware, the bullseye? Because you went from rod mounted
We go
device
backwards.
that, yeah, rod mounted device that people enjoyed but had their issues with and didn't want to charge it, didn't want to transfer it rod to rod. How did you guys get from the rod mounted device to now the bullseye, the simplified Bluetooth device?
Same way we got from the BlackBerry on a smartphone to a tracker on the rod to something even more simplistic. It's like the reality is simplicity wins, and from that point of tracker, there's definitely a need and a want from a good section of fishermen. Or my phone's ringing. Good section of fishermen that want to have more analytics and information like the tracker provides, but we recognize that at the end of the day, most people just want to record their catches and simply mark waypoints and then have all that information for later. And
Yeah, Jake, you were talking about go to market, man. It was what people were telling us. So people started using Tracker, and they were telling us what they liked, what they didn't like. You mentioned a couple of them. It's even as small as we were able to get that thing in 12 months of building it. It was still something that people didn't necessarily enjoy having on their fishing rod in a lot of ways. Like Landon said, some people really appreciate the automated data and will deal with it on the fishing rod, but it literally felt like that, more dealing with it. So they told us about the button, Jake, and they said, this button is compelling. Want to be able to mark catches, want to be able to mark waypoints, really interested in the simplicity of being able to capture what tackle I'm using. So we really started focusing there, and that ultimately led to the bullseye.
Absolutely. And then the bullseye was the product that I was using for the entirety of the Angler Tour, which I'm assuming some of the people listening to the podcast know what the Angler Tour is, but the tour was this insane 2-month fishing road trip that my buddy Alex and I did. He was the videographer, I was the host. We drove around the U.S., fished with a whole bunch of different personalities, just tried to gather as much fishing intelligence as possible, which there's the name of the podcast right there, and we were using bullseye to track the whole time. So that was like the first field testing of bullseye itself. So how did you guys get to the point?
How pumped are you to tell your kids about that fishing trip one day, Jake?
Oh, I mean, it's
insane.
the absolute most incredible fishing trip I could ever ask
So everybody
for.
has to understand, we're like back at the
jealous
office
about it. Yeah, I'm
every
salty.
single time. Jake's on these epic fishing trips. We're back at the office, literally watching Jake's profile in the computer, because it's kind of like the fish mode screen in the app where you can see real-time trip paths, catch locations. And with Jake, we're doing this beta test on some new stuff we're bringing into the app. And we're watching him in real time, just living vicariously through computers.
That's what I was going to ask, is how did you guys get to the point of letting this 22-year-old drive around the U.S. and just
That's
fish
man.
on
That's
the
so
Angler
awesome.
budget?
I think, Jake, I'll remember this call forever. You and I were just chatting, and I asked you, I said, what are your goals for this year? What are your fishing goals for this year? And you were like, I really want to go around and catch state fish. I want to try to catch all the state fish. Okay, that's cool. And mine is to catch a tarpon. And Jose from 13 Fishing, if you're listening, I'm locking you in, man. We're going. But anyways,
How's Jose gonna make it to Angler Tour West? I
No,
keep
no, no,
hearing
no.
about Angler Tour West.
Angler Tour West, that's happening. No, I don't care about the tour. I care about me going to Tampa to catch a tarpon.
You've talked about that.
I'm coming with you too, because I still have to catch a tarpon. That was probably the toughest day on the Angler Tour, was going out, seeing all these tarpons swim by, these massive 5-foot shadows, and not catching any. That hurt.
Hey Jake, which trip do you think about the most when you think back on the Angler Tour? Like, what's the first one that comes to mind?
First one is, it's either Martha's Vineyard or the South Holston, and I mean those are two insanely opposite trips, but those were just the two that stuck in my mind the most. It was South Holston was just another world, and then Martha's Vineyard
Martha's Vineyard for the next 3 months.
Yeah, Martha's Vineyard's just, those guys fish harder than anyone in the country. That's just...
If I was to put music to those two episodes and to those two trips, Martha's Vineyard would be like hard death metal, just raging, and South Holston would be real peaceful, tranquil, like real epic scenery, like.
And I think that's why those two stuck in my mind the most, because it's just the contrast. Yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved every bit of it, and I heard you guys we're obviously talking about that West Coast tour, so we definitely got some comments on YouTube saying people getting angry that we weren't coming out west, that we weren't visiting certain states, and so everybody's gonna get their love at some point, but that's hopefully sometime down the road.
Yeah, and dude, we've talked about OVA, we talked about Tracker, we've talked about the Bullseye. What we haven't talked about, and what I'm most excited about for the Tour West, is at our core, we're a fishing app company, and we really feel like we're just at the starting line with the app. There's so much stuff that this team's working on to bring to the mobile and the web side of this thing, which is really that reflection piece where you can understand the data that was captured throughout a fishing day, but then also input additional information so that you can learn and improve. So that you can share, compare, compete. We're working on a social network. So as fishermen ourselves, we hate the fishing apps where you don't have much control of your info, where things are more publicly shared and less controlled by you, the user, the fisherman who cares intimately about this stuff. So we want to do things differently. Everything on Angler, the way our team's working on this, is private by default. But you'll be able to take information as you please to share what you want with who you want. This is something what we're super focused on right now and really excited about.
This is what I'm excited about. I can start live streaming my trips, so I can make Nick jealous when he's working and I'm fishing. So I can just live stream the trip over to him and be like, screw you, man. You're sitting behind a computer.
And then you guys come full circle.
You too, Jake. Yeah, I'm going to do it to you too, just so I can get back to you from the Angler Tour.
Yeah, live streaming is going to be sweet.
Yeah, the Angler Tour's got a lot to get back on. So we're obviously, the important part of Angler is gathering fishing intelligence. Is that what Angler has always been about, or did it start as a different message and built up to fishing intelligence through the creation of Bullseye?
That's a great question.
I think it started from the competitive edge that was had around that campfire, and it ultimately grew because of the people who started using what we were creating along the way and telling us what they thought, what they wanted to see different. Today we work with an awesome group. It's called the Angler Tribe. It's just a close group of people who have constantly been building this with us, essentially. And, they help tell us what they want to see. I think as we continue to mold down that path of more users, more people building this with us as fishermen and what they want to see come to life here, the better it's going to continue to become.
Let's just get to a fun story. How about each of you guys give me a good fishing story. Landon, there's one that I definitely want to hear on your end. I think you know the story I'm talking about. Nick, just hit me with a random one.
Where were we? Where did we fish down in Texas after Bassmaster? Was it out of Galveston?
It was at Galveston. It was actually.
Who was that guy? He's awesome.
Cliff. Yes, Cliff. We took Todd down there. It was you, me, TJ, Todd. There's someone else. Yeah, Cliff.
Yeah, man. So, this is embarrassing. We were out with Cliff. We were having an awesome day. What were we catching?
We were catching speckled trout. Yeah, we were catching sea trout, but we kept catching gaff tops. We were catching flounder too. We kept catching gaff tops, and I don't know if this I'm maybe stealing your thunder here on the gaff top story. All right, I'm gonna shut up.
No, go ahead.
No.
Go ahead.
I just remember you pulling a gaff top out, and those damn things are so slimy, and it wrapped around the line, and it was snotted all up and down the line, and Nick screamed like a little girl. Like,
Yeah, I knew that's where you were headed.
No GoPros or cameras out or anything to capture the moment?
No, unfortunately not. We have the trips on ANGLR though. Definitely have that, but
Those slimy things, man, I can't do it. That's like just...
Yeah, I did handle one of those gaff tops when I was out with Cliff on the tour, because I'm like, I have to take a picture with it. I can't just let this fish go. I've never caught it before. I got to get a picture. And he said, okay, well, you're gonna get slimed. And so sure enough, picked it up, just put it back in, and then for the next hour and a half, I think I was trying to wipe slime off my hands. Those fish are brutal. Yeah.
Fishing with Cliff was awesome, man. These flounder were incredible, and we harvested a couple of them. Cliff takes you back to a restaurant.
a little marina.
Inside of a little marina out kind of in the middle of nowhere. And they clean the fish, they prepare it with a dish, and then they serve it out to you like you'd never know it. It's awesome.
So what do you think I should tell? Because I have probably too many of them.
I'm looking for a certain story that has to do with Nick and river fishing and a light line and walleye.
This is a great story. This dude, let me tell you something. So I'm sure someone listening has had this happen to them. It was definitely the first time it ever happened to me. And so we go up to Allegheny, actually the same place that we kind of came up with the idea for ANGLR. And Nick's like, let's go fishing, and we had just gotten off work. I'm like, no, I'm just trying to chill, drink a beer or something, and he convinced me to go fishing. So we walk down. We're just wade fishing. I have this little like 1/4 ounce white Mepps spinner, and I have it on a trout rod. It was in the fall, so we were thinking about the next day going up and doing some trout fishing in the streams, and so I had it on this 4-pound test. I tossed it out a few times, and all of a sudden, my rod just bent. just, dude. I thought it was a muskie for quite some time, and I fought it for about a half hour. Yeah, dude, it was epic. Drug me down the stream or down the river for probably a 1/4 mile, and finally get it into this eddy where I could handle it a little bit better, and got it up to me. It was a walleye. It was a 29-inch walleye, but just super fat.
Nice fish.
Nice fish. And so we were both stoked. We're like, oh, we're I don't typically keep fish, but we were camping, and I was like, all right, we're keeping this. We're eating the cheeks off of it. We're gonna barbecue it up, and so we get back to the cottage, and we're taking pictures with the fish, and this dude. I take a picture, or he's like, take a picture with me with my phone. I'm like, all right, cool. So he holds up this big walleye in front of him, and it's on his phone. And so I didn't think anything of it, right? And the next week, we're back in town, and someone's like, did you see that fish that Nick caught? I'm like, what do you mean? He didn't catch anything this weekend. He's like, yeah, dude, oh my God, I've never seen such a fish like that, And I was like, it didn't occur to me at all. I'm like, and I called Nick, and I was like, yo, did you tell someone you caught a fish? He's like, yeah, I did catch a fish. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, that walleye, man. I was like, dude, that is, what are you talking
All
about?
right. In my defense, what Landon didn't say is I was totally a part of this moment, all right? So we're waiting out in this river, and Landon's like, let's go. We're not going to catch anything with this. Like, we'll fish tomorrow. We were going trout fishing. So he's like, we'll fish tomorrow. So he was like, let's get out of here. And I'm like, dude, you see where that tree's hanging out over the river right down there is like, I don't know, 100 yards from where we were standing. Let's just go hit that. There's something in there. Let's go hit that one spot. That's where the rod got bent. Had it not been for me, that walleye would not happen.
That's true. That's very true.
Oh, so it's trying to find the happy medium of catching the fish or getting the fisherman to actually fish.
That's a part of angler too, right? It's all about location. It's nothing that Landon did all fancy. Come on, it's location. I was totally a part of that catch.
And it is collaborative. You can't be successful without some collaboration. So
Absolutely.
I still hold it over you. I still begrudge you for. I still begrudge you for it. But it makes for a damn good fishing story.
It is a good fishing story. Oh man. So when did each of you actually both start fishing? Like what's the first fishing memory?
I was 3. I grew up on a lake, it's about 2 hours south of Pittsburgh, and we had a dock. And on the end of this dock, there was always a school of bluegills there. We'd walk down, feed them with bread, or you could spit in the water. They'd come up and eat your spit. It was like that silly. My dad started calling them my trained fish because I would just walk down after school and toss in a little push button Ninja Turtle rod and just catch fish all evening. And that's kind of when I started fishing, and it became like through high school and even into college and grad school. It was like that was my thing, man. It was that and mountain biking. I didn't really get into other sports. I didn't really get into all my friends like partied hard in high school and college. I mean, I certainly partied in college, but my weekends, I wouldn't go out Saturday night because I was going to drive up to the mountains and fly fish on Sunday morning, So it was like, it got instilled in me very early, and I caught the bug, man, big time.
I was a Northwest baby, so it was fly fishing for me. The Salmon River running through Idaho for steelhead, for salmon. The Selway River up in Idaho as well for trout. I wouldn't call myself. I was never really an avid until after college. After college, I really caught the bug living here in the Pittsburgh area. The tributaries into Erie, fishing for smallmouth bass on Lake Erie, man, that'll give it to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
Drop shotting on deep waters for big footballs.
Oh
it's the best.
Drop shotting's the best technique there is. You can't beat it.
And I love it. It's funny
unfair,
how people
man.
it's funny how people rip on drop shotting. It's like the Ned rig. It's not even fair.
that's like us dropping earthworms into that pond at the old office.
It is such a great technique. I remember my first fish was that I can remember was catching a flounder in Miami. I was with my dad. We were walking out on this pier and somebody caught a fish, so we posted up next to them because I didn't have any fishing etiquette at that age, so just fishing right next to this guy. I pull up this big flounder. I'm freaking out. I'm about to put it back in the water, and the guy next to me was like, "Well, can I just take that home?" And that was the first fish I ever remember catching. Was one that I gave to some guy who probably got a really good meal because that was a dinner plate size fish. But that was my first memory, and then I never really got big into it. I kind of had a lull, and then as soon as I'd say start of early high school is when I discovered that a pond across my street had a ton of bass, and that's when I really got into it and started just fishing every day whenever I could. Then I started fly fishing and caught that bug, and now here I am just every day trying to get a fishing rod in my hand or messing with a fly or tying something up.
What do you like better? You like fly fishing or rod or like cast fishing?
I don't want to answer that question. That's a tough one. I'd probably say, yeah, it really depends. Depends species wise. If I can catch a fish on the fly, then I would say the fly, because it's just, you feel more, it's more intimate. You have to be one with the water, you got to get the perfect drift or the perfect presentation. There's just so many more things that can go wrong. So I just see that as more of a challenge and more fun, I guess. I don't know about you guys if it's spinning or conventional or fly, but I'd probably say if I had to pick one, it would be the fly, just for the challenge.
The fly, that's what I like about fly fishing, man. It's an art. There's so much to be paying attention to the entire time. It's so technical. It's just a totally different approach to fishing. But if I'm with friends, I don't want to be fly fishing. It's difficult. I can't focus.
I like the running and gunning of cast fishing. I fish a lot with a guy that we muskie fish here on the rivers, and he is strictly fly fishing. And
he's incredible. He's one of those guys that ties his own flies and fishes nothing else.
Yeah, like if he catches a fish that isn't on his fly, he doesn't say I caught a fish. It's not his fish, you know. So he's like true and true. But awesome. Man, when I fish with them, like I probably get 5 to 6 casts in before he's got one cast out and in the water stripping it back to him. So like I don't know, I enjoy the fast pace of a cast rod, but if I'm steelhead fishing, dude, forget it. I'm not even looking at a spinning rod. I'm definitely bringing the 8 weight or the 10 weight, and I just love it. So
if you're listening to this and a fly fisherman, you should follow Ben, this guy that ties his own flies. They're incredible. It's Ben Transue on Instagram, BenTransue.
Yeah, for sure. And those guys that tie their own flies, they're artists. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're musky flies too, so these things are
really huge,
ridiculously juicy.
Yeah, I love how people talk about 12-inch swim baits, and he's casting out 16-inch flies.
That's one of the goals right there, is catch a muskie on the fly. That would be a feat for sure. So I've got one more question for you guys. We've got this podcast here that we're starting up just based on all of the people that we fished with on the tour, just trying to collect as much knowledge as possible and sharing it with people. So where do you two want to see this podcast go?
I want to see it help other people catch fish. I hope that people that listen to this and interact with it can take away knowledge, from these experts and from these people that are coming onto the podcast and talking about their experiences on the water and how they approach certain things. I hope that you give some true knowledge dump, if you will, to the people listening.
Yeah, man, we're passionate about the next generation of fishing. As far as angler goes, we feel like we're just getting started. We're having a blast building this thing, and so I think I agree with Landon. You know what I mean? It's about skill improvement too. Let's all get better and enjoy the time on the water even more, and encourage more people to enjoy that with us.
Couldn't have said it better myself, guys. It was a pleasure having you on the first ever episode of Fishing Intelligence, and I'm looking forward to really opening this podcast up to a diverse group of fishermen and getting just as much fishing intelligence jammed into each episode as we possibly can. You guys will be able to keep up to date with who our guests are going to be lined up on social media. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And yeah, if you guys have any recommendations for people that you want to see be on the podcast, go ahead and just shoot us a message or tag us in someone's Facebook page, and we would be happy to talk with anyone. So just make sure you guys are staying up to date with what we've got going on. Let us know what you think about this first episode of the podcast, and I'm looking forward to catching you guys next week. This is Jacob signing off.